What happens when television's most respected interviewer sits across from one of the most polarizing figures of modern royalty?
At first it looked like a calm, dignified conversation, but as minutes passed, the tone shifted. What began as polite questions soon spiraled into sharp exchanges, eye-rolling replies, and a mounting tension that noon in the studio could ignore. By the end, it would no longer feel like an interview. It would feel like a battle. Diana Sawyer, known for her composed professionalism, sat poised in her chair, smiling with the kind of grace that had disarmed world leaders and celebrities alike. Across from her sat Meghan Markle, dressed immaculately in a cream blouse and tailored navy blazer, her hair styled in cascading waves. She carried herself like someone prepared to control the narrative from the very start. "Meghan, thank you so much for being here," Diana began warmly, her voice carrying that balance of kindness and authority that had made her one of the most trusted figures in American journalism. Meghan returned the smile, but there was a subtle edge to it. "Thank you for having me. It's always enlightening to be invited onto platforms where I can clarify the truth rather than the twisted narratives people like to spin." The audience chuckled politely, though the undertone in Meghan's voice didn't go unnoticed. Diane's eyes flickered with the faintest sign of surprise, but she pressed forward with grace. "Well, that's exactly why I wanted to talk with you. People have seen headlines, but they haven't always heard your voice directly. Let's start simple. How are you doing? How is life these days?" Meghan crossed one leg over the other, straightened her back and gave a deliberate sigh. "Life is busy, demanding. When you've lived under constant scrutiny, you learn to thrive in spite of it. But it's important to remember that people like me, people in my position, are often theonies carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations." Her tone was firm, almost as if she were lecturing rather than conversing. Diana nodded carefully and allowed her a moment before continuing. "And how is Harry?" Diana asked gently, a smile softening her words. "Many people admire the way you've stood by each other through challenges." For a brief moment, Meghan's face hardened, her expression sharpening. She tilted her chin upward. "Harry is fine, but let's be clear. Harry isn't my shield or my story. People always want to make me the side note to him. But the truth is, I'm Theon who has had to navigate relentless hostility far more than he ever did." The answer was pointed, almost dismissive of the question itself. A murmur spread through the audience, just audible enough for Meghan to notice. She leaned back slightly, clearly unfazed. Diana, unfaltering, tried to ease the weight of the reply with another smile. "I understand, but people are curious because they see your marriage as a partnership." Meghan laughed softly but without warmth. "A partnership, sure, but let's not pretend that people don't constantly try to define me through him. I think it's insulting." Diana inhaled slowly, her smile steady but thinner now. She shifted gears. "Let me ask about your children. Many viewers at home admire the way you speak about motherhood. How has it changed you?" This was where the tension became more palpable. Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Changed me. Again, that's the assumption that I needed changing. I've always been strong, independent, aware of who I am. Having children doesn't define me. I define myself. But of course, people love to paint me as if motherhood somehow redeemed me, as if it needed redeeming." The studio grew quieter. Even Diane's co-producers, watching from behind the cameras, exchanged nervous glances. Meghan's words weren't just sharp. They carried an air of defiance that turned even the gentlest of questions into triggers. Diana remained collected, though her posture shifted subtly forward. "I hear what you're saying. Still, many mothers feel a profound transformation. It's a shared experience." Meghan cut in quickly. "Yes, but my experience is different, Diana. And I think we should stop trying to make me relatable to everyone else. I'm not everyone else." Her words landed heavily, echoing in the silence that followed. Diana took a measured breath, keeping her calm intact. She transitioned, hoping to soften the atmosphere. "Let's talk about your journey with the royal family. You've spoken openly before, but how do you feel now looking back?" And that's when Meghan's expression shifted once more. Her jaw tightened, her eyes gleamed with irritation, and her voice grew noticeably sharper. "Honestly, I feel like any mention of the royal family is a trap. Every time I'm asked about them, it's not curiosity. It's judgment packaged as interest. I don't owe anyone answers about an institution that thrived on tradition at the expense of individuality." The words hung in the air like a blade. Diane's smile faltered for the first time, just slightly, though she quickly recovered. She nodded, acknowledging the response without agreeing or challenging yet. The tension had arrived. Viewers could feel it. What started as a polished professional interview was slowly transforming into a verbal tournefoire. Meghan's tone carried an unmistakable arrogance, and Diane's legendary composure was being tested in real time. And this was only the beginning. The camera zoomed in tighter, capturing every flicker of expression across Meghan's face. What had started as polished elegance was hardening into something sharper, colder. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms loosely, signaling that she wasn't here to be handled. She was here to dominate. Diane, steady as ever, adjusted her notes. You've spoken about the challenges of entering the royal family, but at the same time, many have pointed out that the titles, the recognition, and the visibility also brought opportunities. Do you see that balance? Meghan's laugh was abrupt, a little too sharp. Opportunities, let's call them what they were, chains. Diane. The so-called opportunities were just expectations to perform. To smile, to play a part in their antiquated play. You might see it as a gift. I see it as exploitation. Diane nodded thoughtfully, refusing to flinch. I hear you. But others might argue that visibility gave you the chance to amplify your causes. Women's rights, mental health advocacy, racial equality. Don't you feel the position also allowed you to make a difference? Meghan tilted her head, smirk tugging at her lips. Difference at what cost? I didn't need a tiara on my head to care about women's rights. I didn't need a palace to speak about mental health. The irony is, Diane, people seem to think that without the royal family I wouldn't have had a platform. That's an insult. Frankly, her words landed heavy. The audience seated just beyond the bright studio lights shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged looks, some clapped softly in support, but many could feel the dismissive edge cutting through what should have been thoughtful answers. Diane leaned forward slightly, her voice still soft but firmer now. I don't think anyone would deny your talents or your passion, but visibility is powerful, and whether you intended it or not, being part of the monarchy elevated your voice to a global stage. Meghan's eyes narrowed. Elevated by whose standards? I was already making a difference before any of them knew my name. It's time people stopped acting like I should be grateful for being tolerated by an institution that didn't even want me there. There it was, testing. Diane's professional calm wavered, though only for a second. She straightened her papers slowly, buying herself time. She had interviewed presidents, dictators, and movie stars in full scandal, but Meghan's defensiveness carried a unique venom. Switching gears, Diane tried a lighter angle. Let's talk about your Netflix series. The first season had tremendous success. There have been reports, rumors really, that you requested a larger budget and more control for the next season. Can you comment on that? Meghan's eyebrows shot up, her lips curling into a cool smile. Rumors, that's your word, not mine. Let me be clear. When you're creating content that reshapes narratives, you don't ask for permission. You set the terms. If people want my voice, they'll have to understand it comes at a premium. Quality isn't free, Diane. The remark landed with a jolt. A few people in the audience audibly gasped. Diane, ever composed, kept her tone light. I understand that perspective, but some critics have framed it as being demanding. Meghan didn't miss a beat. Demanding or refusing to settle for less than what I deserve. Funny how women with standards are called difficult, while men with the same standards are called leaders. Don't you find that interesting, Diane? Her voice had taken on a lecture-like cadence, as though she weren't answering questions but issuing declarations. Diane folded her hands carefully. That's a fair point about double standards, but let me press a little. Do you think some of the backlash could be less about gender and more about perception? That perhaps the public feels disconnected. When statements about privacy and peace are paired with very public contracts and productions. The temperature dropped. Meghan's smile vanished, replaced by anise glare. Perception is a lazy word. People believe what they're told by tabloids and journalists. She let the word linger, who thrive on poking at contradictions. Privacy doesn't mean silence, Diane. Privacy means I decide what to share, when, and how. That's power, and yes, I've earned it. Her tone was condescending, daring Diane to challenge her. The silence stretched, taut as a rope pulled too tight. The control room whispered frantically into headsets, debating whether to cut too commercial. But Diane raised a hand subtly to the floor manager. Not yet. She wanted this to play out. The veteran journalist smiled again, but there was steel underneath. Now let's pivot slightly. When you think of your time in the royal family, what do you feel? Anger, sadness, relief? Meghan adjusted her posture, leaning forward this time, her voice dripping with disdain. I feel nothing. Honestly, they're irrelevant tone now.